Welcome to the Leader Within podcast with Sue-Ann Higgins. Today we're exploring something I've been building towards throughout all previous episodes, the intentional leader blueprint. If you've been feeling stuck in your leadership journey, whether you're experiencing a leadership plateau where you feel invisible despite your contributions, a performance plateau where you're working harder but not seeing the results, or a self-belief plateau where that inner critic is getting louder day by day, today's episode is going to give you a clear path forward. This episode represents a culmination of our journey together from understanding the three worlds of leadership in episode 1 to managing mental clarity in episode 2, recognizing try harder traps in episode 3, and breaking through the specific plateaus in 4, 5, and 6. Then we deepen our practice in the leadership clarity protocol in episode 7, unpack the 5 gatekeepers of human behaviour in episode 8, and the responsive leadership techniques in episode 9. Today we bring it all together in a framework that will transform how you show up as a leader, the intentional leader blueprint. But before we dive into the blueprint itself, I want to address a powerful myth that's holding you back. Working harder. You know what I hear from women leaders all the time? If I just work harder or longer, I'll finally get the recognition I deserve. This belief is so deeply ingrained in our work culture that we normalise 60-hour work weeks, checking our emails in the middle of the night, and the constant feeling that we're never doing enough. And I get it because you've been conditioned to believe this since the beginning of your career. Work ethic has always been praised, and you've seen people around you putting in those extra hours. You see the frown that a exec or senior leader may give if you've taken off a little bit early. You've probably even been rewarded for working extra hours yourself. This message is everywhere. Work harder, sleep less, do more. But here's the reality check. If working hard guaranteed leadership success, then everyone who works hard would be a successful leader, right? But we all know that's not the case. In fact, some of the most burnt out, plateaued leaders I work with are the ones that are working the hardest. Remember in episode 1 when we discussed the 3 worlds of leadership? Working harder only addressed the external world, the tasks and the deliverables. It completely ignores the inner world, how you're experiencing yourself, and the outer world, how others are experiencing you. And then in episode 7, we talked about the leadership clarity protocol. Pushing yourself harder actually depletes the very neurochemicals your brain needs for clear thinking. The most impactful leaders I know aren't necessarily working more hours. They're working with more intention. They're focused on aligning those 3 worlds of leadership rather than just pushing harder in one dimension. They're investing in their thinking quality rather than their working quantity. What if instead of focusing on how many hours you logged, you focus on how effective you're leveraging your leadership presence? What if the real breakthrough comes not from working harder, but leading with greater clarity and purpose? Here's what happens when you stay stuck in the try harder trap or the work harder trap, so to speak. You continue spinning your wheels, burning yourself out while watching other less experienced but more strategically present people advance past you. Is that what you really want for your leadership journey? Ask yourself, are you willing to challenge this outdated belief and start leading with intention rather than exhaustion? If so, it's time to explore what intentional leadership truly looks like through the Leader Within blueprint. This brings me to the core of what I want to share with you today, the framework that can help you move from accidental to intentional leadership impact. I call it the Leader Within Navigator, and it addresses the common plateaus I see in the women leaders I work with. The Navigator consists of 4 essential quadrants that we've mentioned before. Each represents a type of savviness you need to develop for breakthrough leadership. First is brain savvy. This is the understanding of the brain science behind human behaviour, what triggers people to react in unhelpful ways or respond in helpful ways. When you master this domain, you can apply the 6 principles of the brain and the 5 neural gatekeepers that rapidly decode decision-making, thinking, emotion, and motivation in yourself and others. This builds directly on what we covered in episode 8 about the 5 gatekeepers of the brain. Second is personal savvy. This is self-leadership, self-acceptance, and self-belief. It's about knowing yourself deeply, remaining confident under pressure, and using all emotions in a helpful way. When you master this domain, you develop the 4 hallmarks of personal power and free yourself from negative self-talk. This connects to the work in episode 6, Breaking Through Self-Belief Plateaus, and episode 9, Responsive Leadership. Third is people savvy. This is having a deep knowing of those around you, intuitively understanding what they need. When you master this domain, you bring out the best in people by recognising how the external environment, the external world, impacts the 4 basic elements of human behaviour. You learn to read between the lines and bring the unsaid to the surface so no one feels invisible or unheard. This directly addresses what we discussed in episode 4 about breaking through leadership plateaus. The 4th quadrant is change savvy. This is recognising that we not only live in a VUCA world, we live a VUCA life. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This quadrant is about developing the ability to navigate constant disruption. When you master this domain, you can use what I call the REACH formula to experiment, advocate, pivot, and form. This builds on what we explored in episode 5 about performance plateaus. What's powerful about this framework is it creates a progressive journey. As you develop these 4 types of savviness, you move from merely surviving in your leadership role to striving, then through thriving in your current position, and ultimately flourishing by driving meaningful change and becoming what I call the strategic trailblazing leader. The progression creates alignment between the 3 worlds of leadership we discussed. Your inner world, how you experience you, your outer world, how others experience you, and the external world, how everyone uniquely experiences the circumstances around them. I've seen this framework transform leaders across industries and at all leadership levels. I've been sharing with you a few brief case studies and examples throughout the episodes. You remember Jay from episode 4, she was stuck in the leadership plateau for 4 years in a division where women represented less than 14% of leadership positions. Despite her exceptional skills as a relator and activator, she found herself consistently overlooked. By applying the intentional leadership blueprint, specifically developing her people savvy, she transformed her communication style and leadership presence. Within a year, she boldly told a boss she was ready for his position, securing an active role, and was permanently appointed sometime later. Today, instead of describing her leadership journey as pushing a boulder up a hill, she describes it as standing on the mountain top, helping her leaders navigate to easier ground. Lee, who we met in episode 5, was experiencing a performance plateau. Despite her visionary thinking, she struggled to translate her strategic ideas in ways that others could understand. By applying the intentional leader blueprint, specifically focusing on the intersection between people savvy and change savvy, she developed new communication approaches that bridged the gap between her strategic thinking and others' understanding. This led to a strategic rollout that won her organisation a business award and earned her a promotion. Lee's story demonstrates how the blueprint can transform performance plateaus into leadership breakthroughs. Then we had Sam, whose self-belief plateau we explored in episode 6. Using the intentional leader blueprint to rebuild her confidence after relocating her family internationally and suffering a devastating setback when an administrative area cost her a senior role. By focusing on her personal savvy and rebuilding her self-belief, she reclaimed her leadership identity. Within 12 months, she secured a CFO position that exceeded her original career aspirations. And Claire, who we met in episode 9, was caught in what I call the 2 a.m. leader syndrome, waking up at night, racing thoughts, finding herself increasingly reactive with her team. By implementing the leadership clarity protocol from episode 7 and responsive leadership techniques from episode 9, she transformed her leadership presence. Her 6-month journey resulted in team describing her as present, approachable, and inspiring, qualities that had been lost when she had been caught in reactive leadership patterns. What strikes me about these stories is none of these leaders needed to work harder. They needed to work differently. Their breakthroughs came not from putting on more hours, but developing specific types of savviness that addressed their unique plateaus. So how exactly do you develop these types of savviness? This is where the REACH formula comes in. It's a systematic approach to breaking through leadership plateaus, and it builds directly on the leadership clarity protocol that we discussed in episode 7. And also it has some responsive leadership techniques from episode 9. REACH is an acronym. R stands for Rethink Your Situation. This is about establishing a baseline to determine what's working, what's not working, and assessing the capability skill set you need in the future. This typically takes 1 to 4 weeks and involves honest reflection about where you're currently plateaued. This step connects directly to the leadership clarity protocol in episode 7. Just as you learnt to create clarity in your thinking and metabolize your stress, this step helps you gain clarity about your current leadership state. E in the REACH is for explore alternative possibilities. This step helps you identify the best path forward for strengthening or building the capabilities you need. Instead of trying harder in the same ways, you're exploring different approaches that may get you better results. This addresses the 5 gatekeepers we've explored in episode 8 by exploring alternative approaches. You're considering how to communicate and lead in ways that don't trigger those neurological threat responses in yourself and others. A represents acquire new knowledge. Here you dive deeper into specific capabilities implementing practical actions to build further skill. In our coaching experience, in group coaching or in one-on-one, we provide leader guides, training, and curated resources that accelerate this process. This connects directly with what we discussed in episode 9 about responsive leadership. The 6-second pause, for example, is a micro skill that you can acquire and practice to create better space between trigger and response. C stands for coach the behaviour. As you build new knowledge and skill, coaching reinforces the required behaviour, blocks, and challenges current thinking or limiting beliefs. This typically spans 2 to 8 weeks and is where the real transformation occurs. This step connects to our discussion in the Try Harder Traps in episode 3. Coaching helps you recognise where you're falling into mind traps, self-sabotage traps, people traps, or comfort zone traps, and guides you back to intentional leadership. H is for honing deliberate practice. The final step involves using the tools and techniques from the Leader Within method to reinforce new behaviours and sustain desired outcomes. This continues for 4 weeks and becomes an ongoing practice. This step builds on the metabolising the stress practices from episode 7 and the responsive leadership techniques from episode 9, creating a sustainable approach to leadership transformation. What makes this formula so effective is it creates a virtuous cycle. As you begin to see results from your new approaches, your confidence grows, which makes you more willing to try new behaviours, which leads to more success. For those wanting to accelerate this journey, our Leader Within coaching experience provides structured support through each of the REACH formula. It includes onboarding to identify the specific plateau and a set of clear goals, access to the leader guides that provide you the strategies for each capability in the circumplex model that you want to build, regular coaching sessions focused on implementing high payoff changes through manageable micro steps. What makes this approach unique is that it's not curricular driven. It isn't a training course. It's tailored to your specific leadership plateau and the capabilities you might need the most help with. Whether you need to break through a leadership, performance, or self-belief plateau, the program adapts to meet you where you're at. The combination of evidence-based content, personalised coaching, and structured implementation support creates breakthrough results faster than traditional development approaches. Leaders typically see a noticeable shift within the first 3 weeks and significant transformation within the 6 to 12-week mark. The approach directly addresses the 3 worlds of leadership alignment we discussed in episode 1. It helps you align your inner world, how you experience you, your outer world, how others experience you, and your external world on how everyone uniquely experiences the circumstances around them, at home and at work. Now I want to help you take immediate action with these 5 simple but powerful steps. The first action is to reflect on the 4 savviness area: brain, personal, people, and change. Which of these 4 areas need the most attention in your leadership right now? Where do you feel most plateaued? Is it understanding the neurological aspects of leadership, in your self-leadership, in bringing the best out of others, or in navigating change effectively? The second action is to assess your current position on the savviness ladder. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you be placed? Be honest. This is a baseline for essential for tracking essential growth. And that savviness ladder can be seen on anne.com.au/episode 10. The third action is to identify one capability from the leader within circumplex you'd like to develop. Is it self-leadership? Is it communication and influence? Is it stakeholder engagement? Just choose one focus area initially. And again, that's out in episode 10 show notes. Fourth, consider how a structured approach might accelerate your leadership growth. What support systems could help you break through faster? Remember, we discussed in episode 9 about the power of structured support in creating sustainable change. And the final action step, number 5, is to visualize your leadership impact if you overcame your current plateau. What would become possible? How would it change your team, your organisation, your personal satisfaction, your family and your life? This is connected to episode 6 about the power of visualising leadership success. Remember the core truth. You're only one reconstructed thought away from the breakthrough you deserve in life and in your leadership journey. The path from plateaued leader to strategic trailblazer leader who's purposeful and intentional isn't about working harder. It's about leading with greater intention. If today's episode resonated with you and you're ready to move from plateaued leader to strategic trailblazer leader who has intentional leadership impact, I invite you to hop on the wait list for the 6-week online coaching experience called the Intentional Leader Blueprint. When a seat becomes available, I'll reach out to you and we'll have a chat to see if the program is a right fit for you. Go to sue-ann.com.au/intentional to register your interest. Thank you for joining me on this leadership journey over the past 10 episodes. We've covered so much ground, from understanding 3 worlds of leadership to breaking through specific plateaus to developing responsive leadership skills. I hope these insights have inspired you to see your leadership journey in new light. Next week, we'll be talking about how to build a legacy your colleagues, friends, and families will be proud of. For now, remember that leadership isn't about proving your worth through constant effort. It's about showing up with clarity, purpose, and presence. This is Sue-Ann Higgins signing off for this week on the Leader Within podcast. Lead with clarity, passion, and purpose.